Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our morning Bhagavatam class. This morning we continue with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 3, verse 43, and the chapter is entitled Bhumi Gita in the Canto 12, The Age of Deterioration. We're very happy to have His Holiness Candramauli Swami with us. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, my obeisances, Anasuya, to you and to all the devotees, for the Rupescha,
His present Vacha,
Vacha, Ditanam. So today is the celebration of the disappearance of Srila Ramanujacarya. So I'm going to speak a little bit about Ramanujacarya. Because I think he's such a great and powerful Charya, it's worth giving some time and attention to. And so for the edification of all the devotees, because I didn't prepare at all for this class, I'm going to go by memory and speak mostly a few pastimes of Ramanujacharya that I can recall. So, but I think these pastimes are very instructive because they also teach us certain qualities and characteristics about devotion, about devotees, about surrender and devotional service. But I'll give a little bit of a brief background information before I do that about Ramanujacharya, who he is. And for that, I'll read something that will be helpful. If you could stop the share screening, I think that would probably make it easier. Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Gyantimirandasya Gyanajana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yanik Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Menobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadambayam Dadati Swam Tadatikam Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Sri Makti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachari Ninir Visesa Sunyavari Pasyatya De Satarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sripad Ramanujacharya is a partial incarnation of Lord Anantasesh and Lakshman, and was born in the year 1017 AD. So you see his 1000th anniversary celebration, which was a worldwide celebration, happened about 6 years ago. On his appearance, which is usually in the very beginning of the month of April. He appeared in a very repressive environment where religion meant grammatical analysis of the scriptures, and God had been delegated to a vague, impersonal existence. He was born in the village of Bhuttapuri in the southern part of India. His parents, Kantimati and Keshavacharya, they didn't have any children for many years and performed austerities in holy places, and finally were blessed with a beautiful child bearing many auspicious markings. His name Ramanuja, meaning the younger brother of Lord Ram, Lakshman. It was given by his uncle Shailapurnam, who was one of the leading disciples of Jamunacharya. His appearance is predicted in the scriptures even before he appeared. Sri Sampradaya identifies Ramanuja as an incarnation of Adishesh himself. The following are the scriptural evidence, and then there's a series of verses describing him. So he appeared at that time when impersonalism in India was quite strong due to the effects of Sankaracharya, preaching of Sankaracharya. And he was quite the opposite. I mean, he was an incarnation of Lakshman and Anantasesh together. There are many beautiful stories of him growing up and how he actually defied his teacher, whose name was Yadava Prakash. Yadava Prakash one time started to describe the face of Lord Krishna by comparing his face to the backside of a monkey. When Ramanujacharya heard the description by his teacher, he started to cry out of anxiety, hearing how Krishna's face was being compared to a backside of a monkey. And then his spiritual master became a little disturbed that he was disturbed by what he was saying. And so there was a discussion ensued, and his teacher got very angry and threw him out of the school. But that was a benediction because it led him to going on to studying Vaishnavism and becoming a great acharya. There are many wonderful stories in the life of Ramanujacharya that are very instructive. And I'll tell one that's quite interesting. He had a nephew. His name was Dasarati. Dasarati was also a great scholar of the Vedas, and he was known for such things. One time, Ramanujacharya's niece, she was a young girl, she had just got married, but her mother-in-law was abusing her quite severely by making her run down to the river and haul buckets of water and bring it back to the house, and then gather the wood and then do the cooking for her son, or the girl's newly wedded husband. And she was just a young girl, and she was being forced by her mother-in-law to do very hard work. And she was in distress. She came to her uncle Ramanujacharya and told him about the situation. He said, "Don't worry, go back and I will arrange some help for you." Just around that same time, Dasarati, the great scholar and also a relative of Ramanujacharya, came, and he asked his uncle, the great Ramanuja, what is the meaning of the verse, Sarva Dharma Parikshajam Mammekam Saranam Bhaja Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Moksha Yashyami Masichaha? That famous verse spoken by Lord Krishna, which was the culmination of Krishna's teachings to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. that after giving him so many instructions on the science of bhakti and showing bhakti as the superiority over karma and gyan, he finally gave him this instructions. Now, abandon all of your own ideas on how you can make progress in spiritual life and just surrender to my instructions. And I'll protect you, I'll guide you. Don't worry, don't hesitate, don't fear. So that verse is often quoted as one of the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita, which culminates the whole explanation what is pure devotional service. So he wanted to know what that verse actually meant. So Ramanujacarya, remembering the plight of his niece who wanted some help, he said to Dasarati, Dasarati, you go, I'll answer your question, but you go first and help your cousin. She's struggling. She just newly got married. Her husband's mother, her mother-in-law is abusing her. She needs some help. So go and help her. So he went, and she was happy. And she used to go out of the house acting like she was doing all the work, so her mother wouldn't suspect. And Dasarati would bring in the wood. He would haul the water from the river for her cooking, for whatever else she needed. So he was helping out really nice, and he was doing, just manual labor. Now he's known as a great scholar also. So one day when Dasarati was in the middle of doing some of his movements from place to place, doing the service, he saw a gathering in the middle of the town, and he wanted to see what was the reason for it. And then he saw in this large circle of people, there was a man standing in the middle, and he was giving a dissertation and instructions on the revealed scriptures. And then Dasarati, he stopped to listen to what this man was saying. But he didn't like his understanding and interpretation. And so he started to indicate by his facial expressions what the man was saying was not correct. The man who was given the talk noticed that this person in the crowd was making faces and showing, physical expressions of dissatisfaction to what he was saying. So he turned to him, said, "Oh, well, I can see you think you know more than I do. Let me hear your explanations on this subject matter." He was talking about Vedanta Sutra. And then Dasarati, he was dressed as an ordinary worker because he was doing the work for his niece there. He started to just explain. And in his explanations, everyone in the crowd just started to listen with great attention. Even the person who was giving the lecture was amazed to hear his explanations on the Vedanta Sutra. And then, after Dasarati had finished, it was understood that from everyone that this was not only correct, but it revealed higher and higher knowledge of Vedanta Sutra. And so the man, he said, "Wow, who are you?" He said, "Well, my name is Dasarati." Oh, the man also knew, he'd heard of the famous Dasarati, and he said, "Oh, you are Dasarati. Why are you dressed like that? Why are you doing this menial labor?" And then he said, "Well, that's the instructions of my spiritual master, Ramanujacarya." So I'm simply carrying out his instructions. And then that was understood from that particular pastime. That was the meaning of the verse, Sarva Dharma Parikshajam Mekam Saranam Bhajam. Whatever the spiritual master desires, one should keep that desire, that instruction, foremost in the execution of their devotional service. Although Dasarati was a great scholar, he was asked to do ordinary menial services that anyone could do. But Ramanujacarya wanted to teach him based on his own question of what is the meaning of that verse. That verse actually means whatever the spiritual master wants, that becomes the focus of the life and soul of the devotee. Ramanujacarya used that example to make the point to Dasarati. This is the meaning of that verse. Guru orders, disciple says, the instructions of my spiritual master are my life and soul. Yasyat prasada bhagavat prasado, yasyat prasadan nagatita topi. Without following the instructions of the spiritual master, no one can make any advancement at any time in devotional service. Those instructions are the lifeline for the devotee to execute his devotional service in such a way that he may gradually make some progress towards the goal of life, pure devotion to Krishna. So, there's another pastime that's also very interesting. Ramanujacarya was staying in Sri Rangam, and there was one great person we heard from the introduction that I gave. He was a very senior person. He was actually the uncle of Ramanujacarya. His name was Shaila Purnam. Now, Shaila Purnam was living in a place called Tirupati at the time, and he was taking care of the deity there. Shaila Purnam was known as a great devotee and very much absorbed in serving the Lord of Tirupati, or Balaji. So one devotee, disciple of Ramanujacarya, can't remember his name right now, he came to Ramanuja and he said, my dear uncle, my dear Guru Maharaj, I have a question. Ramanujacarya said, well, what is your question? He said, can you describe the qualities of a devotee of the Lord? Ramanujacarya thought for a moment and he said, that question can be answered by Shaila Purnam. So you go to Tirupati, you take shelter of his lotus feet, and you inquire from him. He will give you the answer. So, on the instructions of Ramanujacarya, this devotee left. It was quite a distance to get there from Sri Rangam to Tirupati. But he went after, and then he came into the association of Shaila Purnam. And he asked, Shaila Purnam, can you tell me, I've been sent by Ramanuja, can you tell me the qualities of a Vaishnava? What is his qualities? How is a Vaishnava known? Shaila Purnam remained quiet and didn't answer. And he said, you stay here for some time and you do some service. So he took the instructions of Shailapurna and stayed there. And for many weeks, he started to work and do various services. After being there for about a month, there was a big festival to be held. And so Shailapurna told him, you serve the prasadam to the devotees for the festival feast. So very dutifully, he had been carrying out the instructions of Shailapurna. And now when this feast came, he was just as eager and served very nicely. After serving very nicely, Shailapurna said to this devotee, you came here a month ago asking me, what is that question you asked me? Oh, yes. And then he repeated the question, what are the qualities of a great devotee? And then Shailapurna said, a great devotee is like a crane. He's like a male hen. He's like salt. And he's like you. And he walked away. That's all he said. A great devotee is like a crane. He's like a male hen, a rooster. He's like salt. He's like you. And that was the answer. And so he was a little confused. He didn't understand the meaning of the answer. So after some time, he returned to Ramanujacarya. And then Ramanujacarya, remembering, said, well, did Shailapurna answer your question? He said, yes, but I don't understand the answer. What was the answer? Well, he said that a devotee is like a crane. He's like a male hen. He's like salt. And he's like me. Ramanujacarya could immediately understand the meaning. And so the devotee said, could you please explain? He said, yes. A crane will stand by the riverside and the river will be flowing and he'll be looking down into the river for the fishes that go by. And when he sees the small fishes, he lets them go. But when he sees a big fish, he grabs it. And when the river starts to overflow, he leaves that area and goes to the ocean. Which means that a devotee will always look to associate with other great devotees. And he will all at the same time, when the place becomes, wherever he's saying, overcrowded with materialistic people, he will leave that place and go to associate with great devotees, leaving the river and going to the ocean. Okay, what is the male hen, the rooster? What does that mean? Well, a male hen will be out looking for food for the little baby chickens. So he'll go to the dustbin where all of the refuge is thrown. And he'll very carefully look through the dustbin and look for the different seeds that are there, take those seeds and then bring it back to the little chickens. So in the same way, a devotee will always take the essence or the best of every situation as the principles of devotional service. No matter what the situation is, they go for the essence. In other words, they go for the elements of pure devotional service. A salt, what does salt mean? Well, salt means just like if you have food, if you put too much salt, you can't eat it. And if it's no salt at all or very little salt, it's not so palatable. So a devotee will, but when someone tastes the preparation and it's very nice, no one says, all glories to the salt. They don't honor the salt. The salt is there making the difference in the taste, but at the same time, it remains hidden. So a devotee is like that. Although they are engaged in so much devotional service, and their service might be very much appreciated by others, they don't look for any recognition. They don't look for any, glorification. They simply want to serve. And because their service is so exemplary, others will praise, but the devotee will not become proud. So the salt makes the difference. So the presence of a great devotee makes the difference. And yet that devotee doesn't want to take any credit for that. The salt doesn't get the credit, but still it makes the difference. And then the last one, he said, you. He said, yes. Ramanujacarya said, yes, you stayed there for a whole month without even any protest. You were doing all kinds of service. And then when he asked you to serve for that feast, you served without any. So a devotee is completely surrendered to the instructions of the spiritual master. And therefore, he was using you as an example for the answer. That's an interesting little parable that was given by Srila Purna. How a devotee always wants to associate with devotees, avoids the non-devotees, looks for the essence of everything, and passes by the garbage and the other stuff that may also be mixed in with the essence. And the devotee is always making a difference when they serve. Their service is appreciated by others, but they don't really want any recognition or any glorification or any position. They're simply happy to serve. So this is a very nice little story about the life of Ramanujacarya. I'll read a little bit more about the life of Ramanujacarya. It says here in the section of the Padma Purana, it's mentioned long afterwards, the Lord himself will come down on earth as a Tridandi sannyasi to restore the Sanatana Dharma. At that time, heretics and men of perverted intellects will confuse the minds of the people. Asuric shastras based on fallacious arguments in various schools of thought, very attractive and almost indistinguished from Vedanta, will turn away men's hearts away from Vishnu and cause them to forget his glory. That glorious incarnation will, through the good fortune of the Lord's devotees, come down upon earth to explain and amplify the teachings of the great sage Vyasadeva and the divine singer of the Gita. The Holy One would compose a bhashya on the Vyasa Sutras to save men from the confusion of despair caused by spurious doctrines and lead them to the true faith. The greatest influence upon Ramanujacarya was his spiritual master, Jamunacharya, who was born in the year 918 AD. He was known as Alabandar. And he had, in the age of only 12 years old, Alabandar, who later became Ramanujacarya, defeated a very proud scholar named Kolahala. After defeating, only at the age of 12 years old, he defeated this person called Kolahala. The great Pandit king, impressed by his knowledge, gifted him the kingdom, and soon Yamunacharya soon became engrossed in the duties of a king. However, many years later, by the mercy of pure devotees, he once again took to spiritual knowledge. That's a very interesting story, how Ramanujacarya, who at the age of 12, because he had won this debate against this very arrogant scholar, the king in the area gave him this position of giving him part of the kingdom to rule. But Yamunacharya became engrossed in sensuality when he received that royal position, as it is understood that this, in the position of king, you have so much facility for sense gratification, and he became somewhat degraded. And so, although he was a great scholar, and now he took up the role of a king and became somewhat of a licentious materialist in the role of a king. It's explained that every day Yamunacharya would send out his cook to the market, and the cook would gather the vegetables and all the other ingredients and come back and cook for the king, Yamunacharya. So this was going on many days. Now, there was one person who was actually a close and dear friend of Yamunacharya, who saw what was happening to him, how he was becoming degraded, very much licentious, taking up the position of a worldly king, and no longer taking activity in spiritual life. So he decided to do something to help bring his friend back. So there was one particular vegetable that was known at the time that if you cooked it and prepared it in a certain way, it would bring peace of mind to the person who ate it. So one day when Yamunacharya's cook was in the marketplace, this person approached the cook and said, "I have this wonderful vegetable for Yamunacharya. Please cook it for him. He will like it very much." So he gave him the vegetable. The cook assistant was very happy. He took it back, prepared, and gave it to Ramanujacarya. Ramanujacarya liked it very much, and he said, "Oh, this is very nice. You should make it for me every day." So every day when this cook would go to the marketplace, this other devotee, friend of Ramanujacarya, would supply the vegetable. Then one day, out of a strategic plan, when the cook went to the marketplace to meet the devotee to get the vegetable, the devotee didn't come. And so he couldn't prepare it on that day. And when he gave lunch to Yamunacharya, Yamunacharya said, "Where is that vegetable?" He said, "Well, when I went to the marketplace, I used to get this vegetable from one very nice man who has great admiration for you. And he wasn't there to give me the vegetable." He said, "Oh, what man?" He said, "Bring him to me. I want to meet him." And then, and so the cook came, and then the next day the man was there. He brought him to Ramanujacarya, and then at that time, after eating that vegetable for many, many weeks, his mind was somewhat changed and became a little bit more receptive and peaceful. And when he did, he started to preach Yamunacharya. "You were a great scholar. You were a great devotee. Why are you wasting your time in this sinful activity as a king? You should take up again your old ways of spiritual practice." And so he spoke in such a way that Yamunacharya realized what he was saying was correct. And so he left that kingdom and started to preach. And Yamunacharya, of course, after some time became spiritual master of Ramanujacarya. And when Yamunacharya was leaving the body, Ramanujacarya was there at the time of the departure of his spiritual master. And his spiritual master body was laid out on a stretcher in front of everyone, and there were many eulogies and were given at that time. But at one point, somebody noticed that Yamunacharya's hand had come in the form of as he raised his arm up, and he had 3 fingers in the air, and everybody was shocked. All of a sudden, they saw the body of Yamunacharya, which was no longer alive. His hand had been raised with 3 fingers. I know everybody was kind of amazed, but nobody could understand what was the meaning of that 3 fingers. And then Ramanujacarya, he could understand. His spiritual master was giving him 3 instructions, and he understood what were those 3 instructions. One was to name a disciple of his after the famous Parasara Muni, a great philosopher of the Vedas. The second instruction was to write a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, which would destroy the commentaries given by the impersonalists at the time. And that was called, let me see what it was called, Sri Bhashya. And then there was a third instructions was to reestablish true religious principles by bringing Krishna, bringing the Supreme Personality of Godhead back into his form as personality, because at that time impersonalism was so rampant. Like at the time of Ramanujacarya, there were so many impersonalists. And Ramanujacarya was famous for debating and defeating many of these impersonalists and establishing personalism. And because of that, many of those persons actually became his disciple. And then he named one of his disciples after Parasara Muni. So he was a great vanguard, because if you understand the history of Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, it's interesting that Lord Buddha came way before this time. At that time, people were using the Vedas to justify animal killing in the name of animal sacrifice. So they were performing these animal sacrifices without the proper credentials and abilities in order to kill the animal and then to eat the meat of that animal. So that became rampant. And then, of course, Lord Buddha incarnated. And he said, forget about the Vedas, just worship me, the Eightfold Mystic system of Dharma. And he never presented himself as the Supreme Lord. He was coming as an incarnation of the Lord, but hiding his true identity. And because people were so sinful, using the Vedas to justify their sinful activity in the form of committing these mass slaughters of animals in the name of Vedic sacrifice. He said, forget about the Vedas. So he got them off the Vedas so they would stop the killing of the animals. So Jayadeva Goswami writes about that in his Das Avatar prayers, that he is Gnostic. He came to teach, don't worship the Vedas, worship me. Of course, he was the Supreme Lord, but he remained hidden in his identity. So he was teaching, in one sense, a covered form of atheism. Don't worship The Vedas worship me. And so Buddhism spread very rapidly throughout India. But then the Lord arranged for the next manifestation of his plan to come, and that was Sankaracharya. Sankaracharya is actually Lord Shiva, but he has also come as a great scholar, and he was from a very early age. He studied Vedas very carefully, and then again he expounded the principle of monism. So, and then he developed a very strong following based on God is one, and God is Nirakara. He has no form, he has no qualities. He is just the unmanifested, undivided one aspect of Brahman. And one should worship the Brahman through various austerities, penances, and meditations and studies of the scripture. And he also wrote his Sariraka Bhasya, which was a commentation on the Bhagavad Gita from the impersonal point of view. So his preaching was so strong that it drove Buddhism outside of India. And Buddhism was forced to leave India because of the impersonalists were so strong, and they went to Burma, they went to China, they went to Tibet, they went to Japan, different places. So Buddhism settled in these different areas. And then Shankaracharya started to preach everywhere. But then later, the next manifestation of the Lord's plan was Ramanujacarya, where he came. And as we can see from the preaching of Sankaracharya, that impersonalism had spread all over the continent of India. And then he very carefully, and he also wrote a commentary of Vedanta Sutra, reestablishing Krishna as the Vishnu as the manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he defeated many of the impersonalism. Madhvacharya followed. He is also a manifestation of the Lord's plan to bring back people. And he started to preach more or less an extension of Ramanujacharya's teachings. And he established the whole idea of worship of the deity and a complete refutation of impersonalist philosophy. The Madhvas, under the guide of Madhvacharya, they are the number one enemy of the impersonalists. They go around looking for the impersonalists and challenge them and defeat them. They are active debaters. I remember one time in the history of my preaching, we were at the World Parliament of Religion in Barcelona in the year 2004. And there were many people from different religions and backgrounds. And then there were symposiums, seminars, talks on various aspects of religious life. So one time there was a panel discussion with, there was 3 different types of Christians. And there was one Protestant, and there was one Mudbite. And the idea was each one was supposed to present their own philosophical teachings, and then everyone would hear from each one of them. And then there would be some discussion at the end. But this Mudbite, I was there, I was watching it. I was amazed what was happening. He wouldn't allow any of these other persons to speak for long without taking issue and defeating their statements. So he turned the whole symposium into this debate. And of course, some of the devotees I was with, they actually knew who he was. And the organizers were getting a little upset because he had changed the whole protocol to a presentation into a big debate. But the other religious leaders weren't trying to debate; they were just trying to present. but he wouldn't let them present. He would just take issue with whatever they said. So the whole thing took a different avenue. And I was kind of happy to see that, because the mudbutts, they are also personalists, and they're very strong on deity worship. They're very strong on Vaishnava culture. In fact, Lord Chaitanya met Madhvacharya during Madhvacharya's appearance, and he told Madhvacharya, I'm going to appear in your sampradaya very soon. And that now we have understand that we are the Madhva Gaudiya, no, we are the Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. Following Madhvacharya, as Madhvacharya was bringing back the whole continent of India slowly towards personalism, then the arrival of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the year 1486 reestablished the ultimate principle of spiritual practice, and that is Achinta Beta Beta Tattva, that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity, is one with and different than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he established his principle based on the teachings of the other four sampradayas. So he took two teachings from Madhvacharya, two teachings from Ramanujacarya, two teachings from Nimbarka, two teachings from Vishnu Swami, the four major sampradayas. Based on these 8 teachings, Lord Chaitanya established his teachings of Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, because these other teachings were teaching either monism, dualism, or what is called it's called Vishishta Dvaita, which is, it's dualism, but it has a certain element of giving the jiva a different position according to our philosophy. I can't remember the actual thing. There's a certain term I'm looking for. But you can see from this explanation how the Lord orchestrated all of these great personalities, first to get people off the Vedas, and then bring them back onto the Vedas, then bring them onto the Vedas in an impersonal way, then bring them onto the Vedas in a combination of slightly impersonal and personal, and then Madhvacharya on the personal, and Lord Chaitanya on the complete understanding. So sometimes it says that you'll see Lord Chaitanya, he's sitting on a chair, and the 4 legs of the chair represent each of the 4 sampradayas. So Lord Chaitanya's teachings, which are actually the essence of the Srimad Bhagavatam, are the foundation for the complete understanding of the worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that the living entity in the material world is one with and different to the Supreme Lord at the same time. Achintya means inconceivable. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam eko bahudad vidadati kaman. That the living entity is eternal, and the Supreme Lord is also eternal. But there is one Supreme Eternal who is maintaining all of the other Supreme, and that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna himself in Vrindavan, who is the Adi Purusha, all the Vishnu manifestations, all the Narayan manifestations of the Supreme Lord's forms are emanations from Krishna. Krishna is the Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Ete Cham Sampalam Pum Sam. Krishna's to Bhagavan Swayam. The Bhagavatam explains it. All the incarnations and plenary portions of the incarnations and portions of the plenary portion are also all manifestations of that one Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna and Sri Vrindavan Dham. Ishwar Parma Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adi Govinda Sarva Karna Karna. So from the time of Lord Buddha all the way up to the time of Lord Chaitanya, you'll see how religious principles were being taught according to time, place, and candidate. This is very important to understand, that people were given gradual understanding of the truth through the various manifestations arranged by the Lord in order to bring them ultimately to the principle of pure devotional service. Achintya Beta Beta Tattva. Achintya means inconceivable. That means no one can understand how the living entity is the same and different simultaneously with the Lord. So that's why many people, or many impersonalists, say we are God, because they emphasize the sameness without emphasizing the difference. And then there's those who emphasize the difference. The Lord Chaitanya took both those principles of difference and sameness and combined it into one, and gave the complete and correct understanding that the supreme, the living entity is of the same quality as God, but different in quantity. Just as a drop in the ocean has the same qualities as the ocean, but the ocean is the ocean and the drop is the drop. You can't swim in the drop, but you can swim in the ocean, but at the same time, both have the same quality. But how to understand that? It's not conceivable by one's intellect. One can only understand that through the process of pure devotional service as it's revealed to the devotee as then one makes progress towards the goal. This is a little bit about the life of Ramanujacarya and a little bit of the history of the spirituality coming up to the present time of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Thank you so much, Marge, for this historical in-depth of this wonderful personality, Sri Ramanujacarya. Thank you so much. We'd like to ask devotees if you have any questions, any clarification, please do either raise your hand so that we can call, in the order of your question and whoever raised their hand. Marge, I have a question. Is when you were speaking about the two principles, I think is the word you chose, that Lord Chaitanya picked from the 4 different Vaishnava Sampradayas. What were the 2 principles, Marge? Do you?
Well, there was
curious.
There's 8 principles altogether, so 2 from each of the Sampradaya. So from the Madhva Sampradaya, we mentioned worship of the Lord in his deity form, and 2, complete refutation of Mayavadi philosophy. Lord Chaitanya was like fire when he would hear someone speaking philosophy that was tinged with Mayavad. So there were many incidents. So and from Ramanuja Sampradaya, he took service to the Vaishnavas, and bhakti is superior than service to the Vaishnavas and spontaneous devotional service, or Raganuga Bhakti. From the Vishnu Swami Sampradaya, he took that bhakti is superior than karma and gyan, and the worship of Krishna in Vrindavan. From the Nimbarka Sampradaya, he took the principle of the gopis' love for Krishna is the highest form of devotion, and the best of that category is Srimati Radharani. So it's mentioned in different places, these 8 principles. Now, Lord Chaitanya took 2 from each one and made it his platform for preaching and establishing pure devotional service.
Thank you, Marge. I just had this curious thought in my mind, if those 8 principles were part of Lord Chaitanya's Shri Shastakam. I was just kind of putting the 8 and the 8 together, but I was just wondering about that.
No, these are the 4 sampradayas. it says that anyone who wants to practice devotional service has to take initiation and follow one of these four sampradayas. But in this age, Lord Chaitanya's teachings are foremost because he's combined all of these major principles into one, and he's glorified the process of devotional service by emphasizing the essence of chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So therefore, we accept Lord Chaitanya as the incarnation in this age for purifying the world by pure devotional service.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm going to go back and write this down. It's really powerful. Yes, Namrata, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance. You mentioned about the impersonalists and Mayavadis. Sometimes I'm not able to differentiate. How do we differentiate between impersonalists and Mayavadis? And
Well, there's two kinds of impersonalists. One is a Mayavadi and one is a Brahmavadi. So Mayavadis are also impersonalists, but there are also other kinds of impersonalists who are not Mayavadis. They're called Brahmavadis. Brahmavadis say that the Supreme Lord is Brahman, and they worship Brahman as the manifestation of the Godhead. We have the example of the four Kumaras who were Brahmavadis when they first appeared from the body of Lord Brahma. But after smelling the tulsi leaves and sandalwood pulp coming from the lotus feet of the Lord, they actually became personalists. So Brahman realization is one level of God realization. Vadanti tat vad vigyan tad jnanam avayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti subjite. So the absolute truth is divided into three, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the Gyanis, they realize God through Brahman, the all-pervading aspect of the Lord. The yogis, they worship the Paramatma aspect of the Lord situated within the heart of all living entities. And the Vaishnavas, the devotees, they worship the Lord in his personal form as Krishna, Vishnu, Narayan. So these are the three. Now the Brahmavadis they're just on the lower level of God realization. The Mayavadis, they're envious of the Lord and they want to be the Lord. So they teach that actually as you practice the principles of spirituality, austerities, penance, study of the Vedas, and various types of meditations, you can actually become Narayan. That's why they address themselves as Om Namo Narayan. They see each other as Narayan, they call each other as Narayan. So their idea is that the jiva, who is one with the Lord, is the Lord, but in a fallen state. Therefore, the process of sadhana brings back the fallen state to the state of perfection. And therefore, the Mayavadis say that the living entity is God, but he's in a covered state. And if he practices the process, then he can realize his position as God. So they're envious of the Lord. They're also atheists in one sense because they don't worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Mayavadis are just, we don't give them any credit because their philosophy is not philosophy. We call it foolosophy, the osophy of fools. So Srila Prabhupada's mantra, Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Satarine, means he came to the Western countries to destroy impersonalism and voidism. The Prabhupada was very strong in both his lectures and in his books And in many of his conversations, establishing Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and exposing all these phony incarnations who come and say that, you're God, but you have forgotten about it. Here's the sadhana. You practice this sadhana. You give me some donation, and soon you will also become God. But God cannot become. God is one. God is always the same. He never loses his position, nor does anyone become God. But we are godly. So they take that position of being godly as being God. That means we are of the same quality as God, but we are not of the same quantity as God. That's what we described in our discussion. So the Mayavadis are envious. The Brahmavadis, they're not envious. And then if they get higher knowledge, they also go to the higher stages of God realization. They can move from Brahman realization all the way up to Bhagavan realization.
So just to clarify, Guru Maharaj, we see many of the religious sects. They practice Guru Puja. They worship their Guru itself as the supreme. So
Yeah,
is that
that's the Mayavadi.
okay?
Guru Brahma, Guru Shiva, Guru is everywhere. Everyone is Guru. You Guru, I am Guru. When I become Guru, then I don't need you, my Guru anymore. They say that Guru is a ladder to becoming the supreme. So you need a ladder to climb to a high place. So once you reach the high place, then you kick the ladder away, you have no use for it. So you worship the Guru to become the Guru, and then the Guru, when one becomes the Guru, he actually becomes God, and therefore one doesn't need Guru anymore. The Mayavadis are envious. This is Sankaracharya's teachings, but it's somewhat twisted around. They worship Sankaracharya. But Sankaracharya said, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Bhaja Govinda, Mudhamate. You fools and rascals, give up all of your speculation and worship the Supreme Lord known as Govinda. So although he taught Mayavadi philosophy, or though that impersonalist philosophy, which was adopted by a class of people who are known as the Mayavadis, Mayavadi means one who glorifies Maya as supreme. And so although Sankaracharya, because Sankaracharya is Shiva, and Shiva is the best of all Vaishnavas, but he was in it, he had to do a mission. And therefore he disguised himself as one who teaches impersonal. But the Mayavadis have been taking his teachings and twisting it around. But one thing we know that Sankaracharya, although he wrote a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita that's somewhat impersonal, he never spoke or touched Srimad Bhagavatam because he knew Bhagavatam was Krishna manifested in literary incarnation. So the Mayavadis, yeah, I went to one conference many years ago where there were many staunch Mayavadis there. And I was there as a representative of Krishna consciousness, ISKCON. And I had to sit through all of their talks and their lectures, and it was just painful. And then they asked me to speak, and I spoke about Lord Chaitanya. But then I saw there were also many of the students of Mayavadis. And you see, if you see Mayavadis, they look quite miserable. Yeah, they look miserable. They had some, because how can you be happy if you think you're God, It's just no happiness. They can quote scripture, they can twist scripture around to make it sound like whatever they want it to mean. They're expert at word jugglery. That's why it says that one who hears from Mayavadis, hears submissively from Mayavadis, your spiritual life is finished, it's doomed. you'll actually start to believe what they're saying is truth, because they're very expert at twisting the philosophy and making it sound very, very attractive. So on two different occasions, once when I went to the World Parliament of Religions, I was there with Sarup Damodar Goswami. We had to make our presentation. We had to sit amongst the Mayavadis. But at the end, after everybody gave their presentation, there were many people there who came. The Mayavadis, the Mayavadi sannyasis there, they all got up and left as soon as the kirtan started. They think kirtan is sentimental. They do bhajans, but you know, Krishna kirtan for them is just like, they just left. If you want to see, I can show you a picture of me sitting with about 15 Mayavadis. Is when I went to San Antonio, Texas. No, I'm sorry. Where was it? What is that place? Not San Antonio. One big city in Texas. I can't remember the name of it. It wasn't Dallas. It wasn't. Anyway, there's a big Mayavadi enclave there, and we were invited. Not Houston, no, it was another one.
Austin, Maharaj?
It's where our devotee, one sannyasi, he preaches there now. We have a temple there. Austin, Texas? No. Yeah, I think it is. It's Austin. Yeah, Austin, Texas. That's right. The Mayavadis will take terminologies that we use and use them themselves, but they have a different interpretation. Sometimes they will chant the holy names of the Lord, but they think that the holy name is a means to the unmanifested, undivided aspect of the Supreme. So they'll worship the deities, they'll also chant the holy name, but they think that the deity and the holy name is material, and it's just a means to go to the higher impersonal manifestation. So Sankaracharya really did a good job twisting things around. And his followers are, so there's a, Prabhupada had to undergo many programs, being invited as a guest along with many Mayavadis. So you can see when the Mayavadis would speak first, and Prabhupada would get in, and then he would take apart all of their statements in his speech. And one time the Mayavadis were speaking one after another, and Prabhupada was the last speaker to speak. And it went on for hours. And when it was Prabhupada's turn, he just said, "Let's have kirtan." So all the devotees just jumped off the stage and started having this roaring kirtan. And there was thousands of people in the crowd, and everybody started to join into the kirtan. Nobody could remember what the Mayavadis even say, because they just twist the philosophy around. It just jugglery of words. Actually, the goal is you become God. That's their purport.
Thank you, Marge. When you're sharing this passage about your Prabhupada, I was wondering that probably he knew that saying anything to them was no point. So Prabhupada, if I just do kirtan and then wash them away, or something like that.
Yeah, there's many Mayavadis still. They're out there. Some of them have big followers in India, and some of them are very popular. Some are Mayavadis, some are impersonalists, some are a mixed class of whatever they want to be. There's so much mishmash out there. That's why sometimes, that's why Prabhupada spoke so critically to expose, because he understood before you can really establish truth, you have to uproot untruth. Prabhupada spoke a lot about that. And even when Prabhupada was sometimes criticized, Prabhupada would call them fools and rascals, hogs, dogs, camels, asses, no better than animals. And people would say, Swamiji, why are you speaking like that? He said, Prabhupada said, I'm not speaking like that. Krishna said, Avajanti mam mudha, you're a fool. I'm just repeating what Krishna says. Of course, if we try to do that, we may look a little pretentious. And so we have to present the philosophy in such a way that, people will be receptive. But Prabhupada wasn't trying to do that. He was trying to instruct us and people in general that this is not the truth and this is the truth. And Prabhupada wasn't looking for followers. He was just giving the truth as it is. And intelligent people came and became his followers. And others couldn't take it. The Swamiji is too strong. It's too critical.
Marj, there's a question here from Nashringa Leela, and she says, Dear Gokul Marj, today many Mayavadis come online sharing knowledge on different topics, for example, on relationships, emotions, etc. What should be our attitude towards listening from them? Just recently, he said, okay, go ahead.
Don't listen to them. The milk touched by the lips of the serpent has poisonous effects. So it's mixed in with their bogus philosophy. If they say anything slightly against the position of the Supreme Lord, then it says, Lord Chaitanya Prabhupada said, he could destroy your whole bhakti. Just don't listen to them. Listen to Prabhupada, listen to the devotees that are following Srila Prabhupada. There's so much knowledge out there in Vaishnava culture that is given by Srila Prabhupada's books, by his followers, by the acharyas. We have Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, we have teachings of Lord Chaitanya, we have, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Bhakti Vinod Thakur especially. Listen to Bhakti Vinod Thakur. He very much speaks about these same topics, but in a very Vaishnav, personal way. His book, Krishna Samhita, his book, Jaiva Dharma, his book, Chaitanya Shikshamrita. Prabhupada recommended we read these books of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And of course, Srila Prabhupada's books, which is a lifetime worth of study. Why waste time with these other things? They're very attractive because they know how to use language. One of the mystic powers is to speak in such a way as to attract the minds of others. That is a mystic power. So many of these Mayavadis and personalists, they have mastered some of that mystic power. And by their way of speaking, they attract people. They have that power of speech. There were many persons like that. There's Rajneesh. He was very good at that. He was articulate and very powerful in his speaking, but he was preaching a bogus sadhana, that sex life is actually normal and therefore it's the highest form of happiness, and therefore when it's used in devotional service, it becomes the highest form of spiritual happiness. And so he was propagating the whole idea of sex life as the sadhana amongst his devotees. That's a whole story about his life. But before that, he was a great scholar of the Vedas. And when he would speak, pin drop silence. Many of these gurus, they have that power. It's one of the 8 mystic powers to speak in such a way as to attract the minds of others. It's an art. You can learn that art if you study it and know the details. The devotees don't have to worry about that. They simply depend on Krishna.
March, I'm so happy that you addressed this point, because sometimes I come across devotees listening to, Mayavadi philosophers who talk about relationships and emotions and this and that, and they get so caught up. And then sometimes I feel, that, oh, probably they are able to, take the good and throw the bad or something. But then again, they get so attached to hearing from such speakers that sometimes I worry, well, it get all mixed up in the stew, and they're not able to differentiate.
Yeah, this is wanderlust, going from guru to guru, or so-called gurus, trying to get more and more knowledge. But as Bhakti Charu Swami wanted to prove to the entire ISKCON world that, and he made it a point to show that everything that we need for pure devotional service, and be even much more beyond that, is all there in Prabhupada's writings. He showed it in a practical way by discussing these points in seminars that he gave. Because, there was a time when people would say, well, Prabhupada didn't give everything. He did. You just have to be able to understand how it's being presented. And Prabhupada talked about spontaneous devotional service. He said, when the candidate is ready, the guru will come and enlighten his disciple in the process of spontaneous devotional service.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Everything there, yeah. We can't even understand everything that Prabhupada gave us, what to speak. Why would we want to go somewhere else when it's like a child who's in kindergarten and he wants to go listen to the lectures in college, That's just a crude example.
Marge, that's a follow-up question by Nashringa Leela. She said, it seems to me that in Kali Yuga, everyone wants to get knowledge cheaply. So even devotees aren't inclined to deeply study the science of relationships. Could that be true?
The devotees who are not inclined, what was the rest of that?
She said, so even the devotees are not inclined to deeply study the science of relationships, etc. Could that be true?
Well, because people are not inclined to study more deeply, they go and listen to these other guys and they think they get a quick understanding of that same knowledge. Yeah, because, and when Prabhupada was here, when Prabhupada was sick, and it looked like Prabhupada wouldn't be with us for long, one devotee said, Prabhupada, can we go, once you depart, can we go to your godbrothers and take shelter? Prabhupada was shocked. And he was somewhat pensive when he heard the statement. And after a while, he responded by saying, if they say one thing different than what I have given you, then your faith will be lost. Yeah, because what is that, Mukhan karoti vachalam. What is it? Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Oikea. And the words of my spiritual master, it's my nourishment. Narottam Das Thakur sings this song that we chant every day as Guru Puja. I'm getting nourishment. I'm getting substances. I'm getting energy. I'm getting everything from the words of my spiritual master. Anako Yomoni As. I don't have to go anywhere else. Everything is there. Just like in a marriage, if the wife is dutiful to the husband and she stays fixed on the husband, she's considered a good wife. But if she runs around to other men, she's considered a prostitute. So, we're just becoming prostitutes. That's it. Running here and there. Stay chaste to the parampara, and you will receive everything and more. But it's the restless mind, that's all. Thinking they can find other things out there. If you say the same thing in two different ways, sometimes people think it's different.
Thank you, Marge. That was a very important point. The point about what your Prabhupada said was really amazing. Like, because I've come across a couple of devotees that I know who actually stepped out and went to Prabhupada's god brothers, and I could see, and actually, Marge, one of them happened to be my god brother, and his faith got weak. It was really sad for me to see him do that, to see him go through that, and it's so real.
Yeah, it's happening to me now. Some of my, I won't mention any names, but some of my disciples are going to listen to some of these persons, thinking that they will get, spontaneous devotional service from these Babajis.
And I think, Maharaj, it goes back to what Nashingalila was asking, is they just want a quick fix from, to get to the spontaneous level, like quick fix. And I think someone was asking a question in your class, March, last week about Siddha Pranali, initiation. They just want a quick fix to everything. It's so dangerous. And then we wonder, why their faith is so wishy-washy, because they want everything so fast.
Because they don't read Prabhupada's books and don't study Prabhupada's books and don't associate with their spiritual master or with senior godbrothers. They associate with other people who go around with these other people, and they're attracted to who they associate with, and they think, oh, here's something more I can gain. But there's no such thing as a quick fix. The devotional service is a gradual process. Adao strata sadhu sangha bhajana kriya anartha nivritti nishna ruchi shakti bhav and prema. After you go through those 9 processes of bhakti, stage by stage, so you can't jump ahead.
Marge, I have a question, Marge, and when you're speaking about this, because sometimes I come across devotees, who are initiated within ISKCON by an ISKCON spiritual master, but somehow they are always drawn to hearing classes or kathas or whatever from speakers who they say are in the Vaishnava Sampradayas. I don't know which one, Maharaj, but they are either Babajis or they are, Brajabasis or, whatever, but outside of ISKCON. And they get so caught up in hearing those classes that I feel like, again, they want that quick fix of the spontaneous devotion. Is that healthy, Maharaj?
No, it's unhealthy and it should be avoided. There's no such thing as a quick fix. What are you going to gain that's not there in Srila Prabhupada's books? It's all there. You have to study. If you make an effort within ISKCON to advance by studying Prabhupada's books, going to the seminars, going to the classes, you'll find that the same thing that they're teaching, but in a way that's given to us by our Sampradaya. Again, I mentioned, you know, if a wife wants to run here and there to try different men just to see what it's like, she's a prostitute. She stays chaste to her husband, she's considered to be glorious. So we should stay fixed on, is there anything that Prabhupada didn't give us? I want somebody to show me something that Prabhupada didn't give us that is being gotten by these other persons. And I'll prove to you through scripture that it's not true. Everything is there in Prabhupada's books. You just have to find it. His lectures are there. Many of his senior devotees are speaking about it. Just like Brihad Bhagavatamrita is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. And you got devotees like Keshava Bharti Maharaj, you got devotees like Shiva Ram Swami, you got devotees like Naranjan Swami. They're all speaking on Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And this is the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. And they're giving Prabhupada's teachings through the Acharyas, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami's, delineation of the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the story of Gopakumara. So you want higher knowledge, well, you want to present it in that way, then just here. Gopi Paranandana did Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which was approved by the GBC as a master presentation on the subject matter. And then just read Shiva Ram Maharaj's books, and Bhakti Sudha Bhakti Chittamani, the whole Vrindavan series, Venu Gita, Napareham, his latest book, which is really about spontaneous devotional services. Vilapada Kusu Manjali, which is Raghudas Das Goswami's teaching love for Srimati Radha in his mood as a servant of Radharani as a Rati Manjari in Vrindavan. But Shiva Ram Maharaj takes the whole philosophy of bhakti and explains it step by step, along with giving the higher understanding of these knowledge. Why don't we read these books? These books are coming out by our own acharyas. Shiva Ram Maharaj's books are amazing. And he quotes all of the previous at Govinda, Lilamrita, Ujjwala, Nilamani. All of the works of the Goswamis are referenced in his books as he presents the whole science of bhakti, stage by stage, and the intricacies of each of the stages, and the understanding how to practice. You read Sudha Bhakti Chittamani, that is a masterpiece. Why go outside? These are commentaries, these are treatises on Srila Prabhupada's teachings, given also by the acharyas. What did Srila Prabhupada do? When Prabhupada wrote his Bhaktivedanta purports, he didn't just sit there and write. He was studying. He had a book on the 8 acharyas. That book is still I think it's in the hands of one devotee in our society. I think Ravinder Swarup has a copy of that book that Prabhupada used for writing his purports on Srimad Bhagavatam. Quotes Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Jiva Goswami, Sridhar Swami, and also Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. 8 acharyas Prabhupada referenced. But he didn't go outside looking for other things to find. He stayed within our sampradaya. So that's very important to understand. It's not a small thing. Because all of these other persons, they have their own twist on the philosophy and on the practice also. Like you hear some people say, well, yes, we should chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, but you don't have to chant 16 rounds. 16 rounds is just a number. So you can chant as many rounds as you want. Doesn't matter how many you chant, just chant Om. That's some of the things they say. They say people, just like when Prabhupada was here, a whole group of yogis came to see Prabhupada, and they wanted to come and congratulate Srila Prabhupada. And they came together as a group. There was about, I don't know how many, maybe half a dozen. One of them spoke, and they said, Swamiji, they referred to Prabhupada, they said, you have done miracles. You have actually made these Westerners into Vaishnavas. And Prabhupada, Prabhupada, he just said, well, if you know what is actual standard, what is the truth, why are you cheating people? Because they were, they were giving something less because they were thinking that the Westerners cannot understand Vaishnavism. So they were given some yoga or something like this or something like that. Just like Bhakti Tirtha Swami tells his own story when he was following one particular spiritual master. At one point, the spiritual master told Bhakti Tirtha Swami, but before he would join, he said, I can't take you any higher. You go to Bhakti Vedanta if you want to learn higher knowledge. Yeah, you remember that, right? And Maharaj talks about that. So, yeah, a lot of them know what is actually the standard. But ultimately, they don't preach like that because they want to get, the profit, adoration, and distinction. They want some money. They want some followers. It's cheap. So they preach something different. I actually met one person who was like that. Her name was Guru. I forgot what her name was. She was a female. She came to Cincinnati. I came to some of her talks, and she was speaking on Bhagavad Gita. But she was somewhat following Lord Shiva and presenting Bhagavad Gita. But she would present Bhagavad Gita in a different way. But in her heart, she was a Vaishnava. But she wasn't teaching Vaishnavism. And when she saw me, she smiled. And because she recognized me as being a follower of Prabhupada. And so that was her real heart, but she wasn't preaching that because it wasn't good business. It reminds me of one of my disciples. They were telling me where their mother, not a disciple, it's a husband of one of my disciples. And he's Indian. He said, when I was living in India, my mother, she was an allopathic doctor. But when this family got sick, she would treat them according to Ayurveda. Yeah, and she was an allopathic doctor, but when her family got sick, she would treat them according to Ayurveda. Why? Because there's no money in Ayurveda. So she was going for the position, but she knew that Ayurveda was superior. So some of these yogis, they know that, Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, but they don't talk like that because it's not good business. But Prabhupada didn't care. He wasn't considering how many followers. He was just going to speak the truth, that's all. He said, he quoted one verse. He said, just give me one pure devotee, that's all. I can change the whole world. I don't want a lot of twinkling stars. One moon can light up the whole sky. But then Prabhupada said, well, Krishna sent me so many pure devotees.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yes, Sridevi Mataji, go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances or glories to Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, in the course of today's talk, you were explaining about Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Ekya, and you were pointing out how Dasarathi very faithfully followed the order of his guru even though he was a great scholar, because he was ordered to do menial service, he did that. In Kali Yuga, we are so contaminated, fallen, just so much. We don't realize how valuable the order of the Guru is. So how can we improve in that area?
Well, hear from your spiritual master regularly. Ask questions based on what you hear. Take the answers and learn how to apply them. If you need help in learning how to apply them, inquire further until everything is clear. And listen to Srila Prabhupada, who is a founder Acharya. Whatever his disciples are saying is coming from him. Anyone who says anything different than Srila Prabhupada is not representing Srila Prabhupada, although he may be a disciple. So it's staying chaste to the Acharya, especially Srila Prabhupada, who is founder Acharya. So he's the Shiksha Guru for the entire society, and we get knowledge from Prabhupada, directly from Prabhupada in the form of his lectures and books. And we get further understanding in a practical way, along with additional philosophical explanations on what Prabhupada said from our spiritual masters. So everything is there. Have we read all of Prabhupada's books? Have we understood everything he said in his books? Have we understand 50% of what he said? And Prabhupada gave his books, gave morning walk conversations, he gave his Srimad Bhagavatam lectures, Bhagavad Gita lectures. He gave room conversations, hundreds, he gave at least 2,200 different recorded lectures we have of Prabhupada. And then you hear something Prabhupada said, clarify it with your spiritual master or someone who is qualified to respond to your answer, question. Prabhupada said, we have so much, we don't have enough time. Prabhupada would say that also. One of the problems of devotional life is there's not enough time. So many things to do. I got a whole stack of books I want to read also that I don't even have time to get to. But I read Bhagavatam every day. Doesn't matter. That's my first reading. Once I finish reading Bhagavatam, then I'll read other things that are also, connected to the principles of the pure devotional service. But Bhagavatam is always first. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama sloki bhakti bhagavati nextati. Bhagavatam alone is enough for self-realization.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. Such a wonderful, amazing, really deep class. Would like to ask devotees if any questions. I see that we are starting to lose some devotees. I'm sure it's because of work or other obligations and commitments. But just would like to ask those who are online if any questions, any clarification. Please jump right in before we close the class. Going down the list so I don't miss anybody here. And if there isn't, Maharaj, would you like to close with one round of chanting, Maharaj? Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. I'll be with you in a minute.
No problem, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I think we can stop recording and live.
Sure. How do I stop the recording?
Click on more. Let's see.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Okay, Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivastari Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Hare Vishnu, Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare 10 minutes. What's it 10 minutes? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. 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 Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. 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 Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Haribo, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari.
Thank you so much, Mark, for such a wonderful class and giving us your time and having us go deep into the historical of the history of our movement. Such wonderful discussion. And thank you for the devotees for asking such very nice questions. Vanchakrapatibhyascha, Kripasindabevacha, Patitana Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha, Srila Prabhupada ki. His Holiness Candramauli Swami ki. Jai. Have a wonderful day, devotees. Hari Har Bol.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna
Jai.
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you very much.